demanded is going down, that is a demand schedule. Economists use these demand schedules once in a while, but what economists really, really love is a demand curve or a graph. All right, so we have this information here, and now we are going to change that information into a graph. So, like all graphs, we have an x and a y axis. So draw your axes. This is the x-axis and this is the y-axis. A little trick about the x and the y-axis. The way I've remembered this for the past 20 years is that a y kind of, sort of, if you draw it right, kind of, sort of has a vertical line in it like this. So that's how I remember that the y-axis is the vertical one. Just a little trick for you. So, in economics, on the y and the x-axis, the y-axis is always the price, and the x-axis is always the quantity. Always, always, always. Another trick for that, P for price has a vertical line in it, so the price goes on the vertical axis. Okay, so we are going to graph out the information that is given above. So our price axis, we see that it has to go from 1 penny to 25 pennies or 25 cents. So we could go up, by fives, 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. If yours isn't pretty and perfect, don't worry. Mine never is. So this is going to be 5 cents, 10 cents, 15 cents, 20 cents, and 25 cents. Now our x-axis is the quantity. We see that our quantity has to go from 0 to 10. So I am going to choose to go up in increments of 2. So we'll have 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. You do want your increments to be as equal distance apart as possible. If you have graph paper, it's a little bit easier. If you don't, just try to be as neat as possible. Even if they aren't perfect, you will still get the idea. And now we plot our points. If you're familiar with this from math class, good for you. If not, you might want to watch this a few times so that you understand how to plot points. So the first thing we do is we go up here and we plot this first set of points or coordinates. All right, so our price is at 0.01. 0.01 is right about here. And the quantity is at 10. Well, 10 is right about here. So you go over from the 0.01 in a straight horizontal line, and up from the 10 in a straight vertical line, and where those 2 points meet, that is where you plot your point. Or where those 2 lines meet, you plot your point. Okay, our next one, 0.05 for the price and 5 for the quantity. So 0.05 is here. 5 for the quantity is right about here. So we go over from the 0.05 horizontally, up from the 5 for the quantity vertically, and where those 2 lines meet, you plot your point. All right, next one. 0.10 and 2. So 0.10 is right here. 2 is right here. So over and up and plot your point. Now those of you who are familiar with plotting points, you do understand that you don't actually need those dotted lines. If you can just see it without those dotted lines, you don't need them. Let's try it without the dotted lines. 0.15 and 1. So 0.15 is here, 1 is here, and if you can see where they match up, right about here. There you go. And then the last one was 0.25 and 0, which is here. Okay, so now we have our 5 points plotted. And then our favorite part in economics is you get to connect the dots. Even if yours doesn't look exactly like mine, if what you ended up with is a downward sloping line, you've got yourself a demand curve. You always label it over here with a big D, demand curve. Now notice this demand curve shows the law of demand. It shows that as the price decreased, the quantity demanded increased. It shows that. If you don't see it, you need to stare at it for a while and think about it. As the price decreases, the quantity demanded increases, which is true for almost all goods and services. This is your demand schedule. Demand, oh, whoops, my bad. This is not a demand schedule. This is a demand curve. Some people call it a demand graph. Economists like to use the term curve, so that's the term that we will use, a demand curve. All right, that's all for that one. Thank you.